It wouldn't be right to start this speech in any other way than by expressing our total condemnation of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. It is unspeakably sad to witness the devastating impact this unjustified and unprovoked action is having on millions of innocent people. What they're going through is unimaginable. To the 43 million people living in Ukraine and the tens of thousands of Ukrainians living in the UK, we want to say, My solidarni z narodom Ukrainy. We stand in solidarity with you people of Ukraine. We want to see very strong sanctions on Russia that target the Russian leadership and elite, including stopping the import of gas, oil and minerals from Russia as soon as possible, while minimising the harm caused to ordinary Russians. We want ongoing support for Ukrainian refugees, and we must see an end to the influence of Russian money in our democracy. So this spring, we find the world in an unfolding international crisis. Meanwhile, here in the UK, we have an out-of-touch government plagued by scandal of its own making and an opposition unable to hold them to account.
Emerging from the pandemic, there was talk of building back better, building back greener even, but in reality, we've seen none of that. Instead, we're witnessing cash for access, contracts for mates, and garden parties at number 10 while loved ones died alone. The Green Party has been talking about doing politics differently for years, but it's never been more true or more necessary than it is right now.
When we spoke at our autumn conference, Adrian and I were brand new in post. Now we're 5 months in and getting on with the job in hand. We've met lots of our hard-working Green Councillors up and down the country since we began our roles as co-leaders, seen the changes they're making and the practical impact that has for the people they represent. We've also met loads of our amazing new Green candidates, standing up for their communities and offering a refreshing alternative to the status quo. We've seen firsthand that people love what Green Councillors have to offer, a genuine voice for their communities, sensible solutions to everyday problems, action to protect climate and nature.
We are so proud of how much has been achieved by Greens in this relatively short period of time. From our members of the House of Lords successfully securing police investigation into number 10 COVID parties, to a new youth employment centre in Green-run Brighton and Hove, from saving woodlands and community green spaces in Derbyshire, Newport and Suffolk, to free bus services in Herefordshire. These are just a few examples. Greens are doing so much, it's easy to see why we're making headway. But last conference, we didn't yet know how much worse the government would let things get. We hadn't yet seen how deep the cost of living crisis would go, and we still haven't. In the face of soaring bills, we called for a one-off winter fuel payment to all, £320 to help households through the worst. We urged the government to make a reversal of the £20 cut to universal credit, to acknowledge that it's the people who are least well off who are hit hardest. We wanted to see the start of a retrofit revolution, insulating people's homes at a mass scale. But did we see the government take any of this on board before crippling fuel bills started coming through the letterbox for millions of homes? Frustratingly, we didn't.
Fortunately, for communities across England and Wales, our 600-odd Green Councillors aren't waiting for the government. On the contrary, they're taking action now to support their communities. They're getting things done. In Lewes, the Green-led District Council has created the Lewes model, a programme for insulating and installing renewable energy for 40,000 social homes across the region, one of the largest retrofit programmes in the country. This model starts with social housing to train up a big new retrofit workforce that can then turn their attention to the rest of the region's homes. Over the years, we've been told projects like this are radical. And if the meaning of that is transformative, then yes, they are. But they're also practical, achievable, and they just make good sense.
We said 5 months ago that action needed to be big. We said 5 months ago that it couldn't happen a moment too soon. But the government has waited far too long to take action on the cost of living crisis. And what they have done shows that they just don't get how much this is impacting people day to day. They refuse to reverse welfare cuts. They've barely made a start at insulating the nation's homes. They speak as if this crisis is some freak event, but we just don't buy that spin. And we won't stop calling it out or pushing forward with the sensible, achievable solutions that could change the lives of millions of people and contribute to saving our planet at the same time.
As this crisis cuts deeper, we must go even further. People are angry, and more than that, they're scared. Bills are more than doubling. The price of food is spiralling. A bus or train ticket costs more than ever. For many, wages are at best static. It can't go on like this.
The government's plans to help ease the pressure on households don't go nearly far enough. For someone on minimum wage living in a drafty rented flat, energy loans and token payments don't stop the outlook looking bleak. The government just doesn't get it, and we know that people need politicians who do. As millions of people are left not knowing how they're going to afford to get through the year, the government's response is to simply burden them with more debt, all in a bid to protect the interests of the fossil fuel industry. This is not just reckless, it's a cruel and dangerous approach which puts the interests of polluting big business ahead of the basic needs of households up and down the country. The Green Party's projections on fuel debt suggest that the government's scheme to provide every household with £200 to be paid back at a later date will increase household debt to energy companies to £7.2 billion.
That's why today the Green Party is calling for this energy loan scheme to be cancelled, and instead for the government to provide households with true support, grants, not loans, in line with our own 5-point plan. All of this funded by a tax on dirty fossil fuel profits. This would include a raft of measures, such as restoring the £20 universal credit uplift and doubling it to £40, extending a winter fuel payment of £320 to all, and providing an emergency grant to homeowners, landlords and councils to fund immediate insulation improvements to those at risk of fuel poverty. It is time the government implements a dirty profits tax on the excessive profits from UK oil and gas extraction and uses this money to provide proper support for every household, and particularly those who need it most. This is a fairer, redistributive measure that the government could take now in order to help people through this cost of living crisis while helping to tackle the climate emergency at the same time.
Our proposal is an emergency measure made necessary because of decades of delay in getting to grips with the climate crisis. People need the money now. But this is also a moment to say enough is enough. We do not have to live this way. A truly green society would not be facing this crisis. And with action now, we can make sure we don't have to face it again. Building and upgrading to the kind of homes that people really want to live in isn't a priority for our government. Because while people freeze in their homes, this government is warm and cosy in bed with dirty energy companies who are making profits from the misery of millions. We say, let's put people first. Let's aspire to a future where energy bills are virtually non-existent, where homes with the latest heat pumps and insulation, so cosy they barely need to be heated, are no longer the exception, but the norm. Where the companies making money from dirty industries are the ones who face soaring costs, not the consumers. Where we're making real progress in the fight against climate change, and we're doing it with warm homes and stocked cupboards.
We're led to believe this isn't possible, but we know it is. I spoke to Paul last week. He lives in a Victorian terrace in Brighton and vividly remembers past winters of damp and drafts and shivering under blankets. Now, after investing in retrofitting, he's enjoying being warm and comfortable and benefiting from much lower energy bills than his neighbours. Paul had to pay for this retrofitting project himself. He considers himself lucky to be able to afford that when most people can't. But imagine if there were government grants for this kind of initiative. It's happened before. In the late 1800s, increasing numbers of high-income households started getting indoor toilets. But they only became the norm 3 generations later. So what changed? Government grants were introduced in recognition that homes without indoor facilities weren't fit for purpose. And here we are again, with homes that aren't fit for purpose. And we need the government to respond at the scale and speed necessary, not take another century to catch up.
Since the UK hosted the climate conference COP26 last November, when rhetoric on the environment was frequent from the Conservative Prime Minister and his cronies, we've heard practically nothing about dealing with the climate emergency. Over 100 days after COP, and despite the UK maintaining the presidency for a year, all we've seen from the government is terrible decision after terrible decision when it comes to climate action. From granting a new coal mine licence in Wales to giving the go-ahead to airport expansion in Bristol, this Conservative government seems to have completely forgotten the promises it made in Glasgow. The box, it seems, was ticked with random announcements and pointless photo ops, and then our ruling politicians went home and forgot entirely about the crisis we're facing. The joined-up thinking we so desperately need for solutions that help deal with the climate crisis and genuinely make life better day to day just isn't there.
And it's for that reason that we're gearing up. A general election is on the horizon. Whether that be in 6 months, a year, longer, it's coming, and we will be ready for it. We are planning the biggest and brightest general election campaign in the party's history. This means local parties selecting candidates to stand across England and Wales, developing an exciting and bold manifesto, communicating our vision for the country, and ramping up the campaign in our target seats so we can get more Greens to Westminster. I'm standing as a candidate in Bristol West, and I could not be more excited. Bristol is my home and I love it. A city that is proud to be a little bit different, to try new things, to welcome newcomers, and to stand up for what is right in life and in politics. That's probably why we have the largest group of Green Councillors in the UK. But it's also a divided city, with privilege and deprivation, opportunity and desperation just a few streets apart. In the food bank I volunteered at, I'd sometimes meet people who had to turn down anything that needed cooking because they had no stove or no money for the meter. Bristolians tell us they don't know how they're going to pay their bills, trapped in an expensive rented flat, worried about their children's health because there's black mould all over the walls. They need an MP to stand up for them, to fix things, to shake up Parliament, to deliver change. They need a Green MP.
Like Carla, I'm standing to be an MP, to be a strong voice for North Suffolk in Westminster. Rural Suffolk has had MPs from just one party for far too long, and people tell me they feel taken for granted by the Conservatives. They feel their voice is not heard, and that the community and the services they used to rely on are being eroded away. Bus services are non-existent now in many villages. The doctor's surgery may have closed. The village pub where they used to meet their friends is now a private house, as is the village shop. There are dozens of boxy new homes springing up on what were once meadows just outside the village that are described as executive homes and marketed to car-driving commuters but are way too expensive for local people. All of these are green concerns. We want strong local communities, affordable housing that's walkable distance from shops, workplaces and public transport, and a vibrant countryside. So it's no wonder that with our strong local campaigning, the Greens have become the main challenger to the Conservatives in Suffolk. We're the main opposition on Suffolk County Council and Mid-Suffolk District Council. Just a few weeks ago, in a by-election in the constituency, we turned what in 2019 was a green-blue marginal into a safe Green council seat. And now we're taking the fight to the Conservatives for the parliamentary seat too. Some people like to say that Greens only do well in certain places, that only certain people vote for us. Well, in a way they're right. People only vote for us if they want a party who cares just as much about child poverty in Bristol as in Suffolk. They only vote for us if they believe in a welfare system that protects them when they fall on hard times. They only vote for us if, like us, they believe it's our duty to leave this planet in a better place than it was left for us. Yes, only people who value compassion vote for us. Only people who believe in strong local communities. Only people who refuse to settle for more of the same. Only people who want fairness to be the guiding principle in decision making. Well, it turns out that that's actually quite a lot of people. And so from Sheffield to Suffolk, from Burnley to Bristol, we're ready to represent that rising tide of people who desperately want a Green MP.
In 2 months, people across England and Wales will be going back to the polls choosing who they want to represent them at the local level to make decisions that will impact their lives day to day. In the middle of this crisis, while worries about fuel costs and making ends meet are rising, we are sure that more people than ever will choose Greens to be their councillors. Greens who have shown themselves to be hard-working and focused, to be trustworthy and dignified, to use politics to get things done rather than slinging mud and scoring points.
Why are we so confident? Because we've seen the by-election results in 2021. In the 7 months following the May local elections, Greens gained 12 new council seats across England, more than any other party. Voters demonstrated loudly and clearly that they want something different, someone different on their team. 20 years ago we dreamed of running councils, having councillors up and down the country, winning previously safe Labour, Conservative, Lib Dem seats, being a genuine alternative. Now that dream is becoming a reality. Over the next 2 months, Carla and I will be supporting campaigns across Wales and England, joining Greens on thousands of doorsteps to make our case, asking people to vote for that genuine alternative. On behalf of the party, we want to say thank you to all those people who've put their faith in us, in you. They are done with settling for the least worst option. Our party is going from strength to strength, and it's because of members here today who are giving voters a party they can truly believe in. Thank you for all you're doing.